Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at how we can add a column to our table and also how we can linearize our data so we can get a straight trend line even though our data is originally curved. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take a look at our original graph. So I've pulled up the data and graph from the last tutorial video. And if you look right here, we said this was a power function or a polynomial function. So looking over here, we can see that the equation for, looking over here, we can see that the equation for a power function y is equal to ax squared plus b, but that's kind of the format we're going to use. So the way we go about linearizing our data is the first step is to identify which function we need to use, and that's the power function. And then the step after that is to figure out, well, how are we going to actually get the data linearized? And so to do that, I posted a link to this website right here that you can use. And if you scroll down to this part of the page right here, it tells you that for a power function, okay, for a power function, the force is proportional to time squared. Which in this case, when we're talking about force, we're talking about the position, but what we can do is we can say, oh, it still works though, and we can linearize our data by plotting the y-axis versus the x-axis, or the values in the x-axis squared. So for instance, instead of position versus time, like we have over here, which I don't have them labeled, but we'll have position versus time squared. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to come over to my table. I'm going to get rid of this since we don't need it anymore, since we know what we're doing. And I'm going to click on my table there. Do that. And I'm going to insert a column in between the time and the position. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want these two, or I want the new column to be next to the old one. So I'm going to select everything in that column by tapping again. I'm going to tap, just to kind of show you guys again. I'm going to tap the letter header there, C, and that brings up the whole column. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit column actions, and then I'm going to go down to, or rather not go down, but I'm going to stay up here and I'm going to do column, add column before. What that does is it puts a column in between B and C. So we have a new column C now. So there's our new column, okay, and I'm going to title this. I'm just going to double tap in there, time, and then I'm going to put a little, where's the caret? I was going to type in time squared. There we go. There we go. That works. So and then I come down here, okay, and then now I have to actually square the time. So the way we do that, if you'll notice, there is a little equal sign over here, and what that allows you to do is it allows you to type mathematical formulas into a cell. So I'm going to hit that equal sign, and it brings up this little bar. Let's zoom in a little bit so we kind of see what we're doing. So anyway, so I brought up the equation editor, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, well, what I want to do is I want to square each time in column B. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select column B, okay, so I selected column B, and you'll notice that B2 pops up right down there in my little bar, in my text bar. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I want to square it. So if you guys remember on a calculator, the squared function, or not squared, but to raise something to a power, you tap that little, it's called a caret. So you tap that little caret button right there, the one right there. And then we're going to square it, so it's going to be raised to the second power. So I'm just going to raise it to the second power. And if you just drag down on the W and release, it brings up a 2. Okay. And so now we have our B2, or cell B2 squared, which will just be 0 because 0 squared is 0. So I'm going to hit return, okay, and then I'm going to close out the keyboard, and I'm going to show you guys a shortcut so you don't have to input that in every cell. You can just kind of copy it into every cell. So if you select the cell that you typed the formula in, which is this one right here, you tap it, okay, just do a single tap at that cell, and you're going to hit cell actions, and then you're going to do, you're going to select autofill cells at the top. So just tap autofill cells, and you'll see that your cell now has a thick yellow border around it. And all you do here is you tap and hold on the bottom of that cell, at the bottom of that rectangle, tap and hold, and just drag down all the way down right there. And you'll see that it pretty quickly and very conveniently populates our cells with the square that was in column B right here, right? So now we can just check it real quick. 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81. So it looks like it checks out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to graph this data again. So if you look over here, you'll notice that it did graph data over here as well. Just ignore that. The reason it did that is because we have that new column in between. We're just going to ignore that for now. But we are going to make a new graph, okay, with the time squared and position data. So I'm going to select all this data, okay, just like that, just like we did in the previous tutorial video. I'm going to select all that data and I'm going to graph it. So I'm going to hit the addition sign up here, or the plus sign, addition sign, whatever. Then I'm going to go to the graph. Okay, I'm inserting a graph. I'm going to scroll down to the scatter plot. So we're going to select a scatter plot. And look, our data is linearized. So if you look at this previous table right here, right, you can see that our original data was this green line, right? And then our new data is this nice linearized blue dots right here. And again, we can do things like we can add a trend line to it, right? We can come up to this paintbrush and add a trend line. So we can add a title. We can add a trend line to it. Obviously, it's linear this time, right? So we can add a linear trend line, a very nice looking trend line. And we can add an equation to it, so it'll tell us an equation. So although I wouldn't use an equation for this one, yeah, pretty cool. And that is how we and that's how we linearize our data here in numbers. So you can see that we have a nice, in our previous data when we graphed position versus regular time, not time squared, we had a polynomial function, right? And now that we've graphed time or position versus time squared, we have a nice linear function, right? So we've effectively linearized our data. And what this does for us is it allows us to look at the relationships between the two different variables, right? So for instance, we know that in our very first unit, kinematics, we found that when we have an accelerating object under constant acceleration, that the position is proportional to the time squared, right? So that's just based off of that third kinematics equation that we learned about. And we can see that that's true for a real object using our graph and our data. So, and that is it for this tutorial video.